You boot up a new AAA title and sometimes you see 5 or 6, sometimes even 10 logos on that loading screen. One studio made this game, but what's all this other stuff? Welcome to the world of co-development, where modern games aren't just made by one team anymore. They are made by many teams working in sync across sometimes different continents, different time zones, and different skill sets. Today, we are breaking down what co-development really means and why it's become essential in the modern video games industry. Hello everyone, I am Piers Dukeplock, video game producer and consultant on over 30 different titles in the video games industry, and I've had the pleasure and privilege of working at a co-development company and with multiple other co-development companies. So I'm going to take you on this ride. Let's go. Let's start off with what is co-development. So co-development is when multiple studios collaborate to build a single video game. It's more than just outsourcing. It's shared ownership of the production. What will probably happen is there'll more than likely be one studio leading the project and then multiple other studios handling key components of that project. For instance, a studio could be doing the multiplayer systems. Maybe another studio handles the cinematics, maybe the animations off somewhere else as well. These are kind of key aspects of co-development. Sometimes co-developers can take a specialization. For instance, you bring along an expert in combat, they will handle the combat for you on your video game, that kind of thing. An example of co-development that I hope everybody's heard of at this point is probably Call of Duty. We know that 5 or 6 studios handle Call of Duty for Activision, and they rotate in and out of who the main studio is, but they're all helping each other because those Call of Duties, they come out every single year and they need everybody to pitch in to help out on bringing those games to life. So why does co-development exist? Well, that's a great question. Games these days are bigger and more complex than ever before. AAA will often take 5+ years just to make one video game, and it will include hundreds of people and need thousands of assets. So co-development allows us to work in parallel so we can get our speed up, therefore decreasing the time to release. It can allow us specialization. So one studio can bring their expertise in an area. I used combat as an example earlier, but it can be in any area. A cinematics expert can come in and make your cinematics amazing. And you don't have to even think about it. That's great. And you can also scale up. So if you need 200 staff to hit your goals, you can't hire realistically 200 staff very quickly at all. So you bring on a studio that already has 200 staff. So now we know what it is and why it's a thing. Let's look at a little bit more detail of who does what in the roles of co-development, because we can generally break these down. Obviously, it's not this way all the time, but usually this is how it goes. There is usually a lead studio who owns the IP and sets all the creative direction. They'll typically have the most developers on it as well. Then there'll be support studios. They'll be tackling the isolated bits of the game or the specializations that they've been brought on to do. So for instance, going back to that combat example, a support studio will be handling the combat for the game. They can also be porting studios, like console porting specialists perhaps. You want to get your game on Nintendo Switch, bam, you bring on a Switch specialist that knows about all the ins and outs of publishing on Switch, or the optimization, or the certification. Bring them on and they'll handle it. And these days, it's very popular to have a co-development partner handle your live service game as well. For instance, if you've made this amazing game, it's going to run for years and years and years. Your developers probably don't want to spend 10 years working on the same game. They probably want to handle the next game. So what you'll do is you'll bring on a co-development partner and they'll handle the seasonal updates, maintaining the multiplayer, doing all of that stuff that your developers probably don't want to do. They probably want to work on something more interesting. There are downsides to co-development though, and this is where it can get tricky. Co-development is kind of a logistical challenge. Multiple teams across multiple time zones, that's tough because then you get meeting conflicts and there's only odd hours of the day that you can kind of meet and you need super clear documentation. So here's an example for you. Imagine there is a studio on the west coast of America. It could be in California, it could be Vancouver, wherever. West Coast. And they've got to communicate with a studio that's in the east of Europe. It can literally be 24 hours before they've had a communication loop talking about an issue or a bug. That's a long time considering, if you're in the same studio together, that's maybe a 30-minute conversation. That's why successful code development absolutely relies on super clear documentation, version control. You all need to be working in the same space and know exactly what you're working on. You need to have these daily calls, these sync calls to understand each other and keep that communication loop open. You need centralized task tracking as well. Everybody needs to be using the same, Jira, for instance. So you know exactly what they're working on. They know what you're working on. And you need absolutely super strong producers and project managers to really drive home, hey, this is what they're working on. This is why they're working on it. And this is when it's going to be done. One miscommunication out of all these could derail weeks worth of work. So if you get that multiple times, you're starting to talk months lost, multiple months lost, maybe even years lost if you can't do this properly. There are always risks and red flags with any relationship, and not all code development goes smoothly. You can see some pretty common issues with, mismatched pipelines and tools. This is where your documentation should really be keeping you together. Different quality standards. For instance, somebody could submit one thing and go, oh, I'm super happy with that. That was a really great piece of work. But the lead studio is like, this isn't good enough. So you have to kind of align those quality expectations there. There can be confusion over ownership and direction. Who's owning what and who's doing what? And there could be the too many cooks problem. You get so many people in a room that nobody feels empowered to kind of make the decisions and to take charge. And the big one, and the one we hear about, I think, the most in the press, is support studios being brought in super late to save a project. That's a big red flag right there. It's not code dev by design, it's code dev by necessity. Anthem is one of these examples where we hear it going along, it's going okay, but not great, and then we hear a bunch of other EA studios being brought on to help finish the game. This can lead to disjointed systems and a lack of cohesion right there at the end, which is the most important part for a video game. Bringing it all together, making sure it's fun, and then shipping it. When done right, code development is absolutely a superpower though, when it works. Studios like Certain Infinity, Iron Galaxy, Panic Button, Virtuos, they are known for elevating the quality of the games they work on through super tight collaboration. It's also a great way for smaller studios to work on larger titles for larger publishers and get that on their CV for their talent. I was very happy when I worked at Warp Digital, a small code developer based in London, to work on something like Dune Awakening for Funcom. They have hundreds of people. They needed code development, so they contacted our small 30-person studio. And for the players, we get an ultimately better game, a more polished game, delivered faster and more reliably, thanks to the talented work of people at both the lead studio and the co-development studios as well. So next time you see that wall of logos at the start of a video game, take a look at some of those logos, because they might be the unsung heroes of game development, the co-developers. And they might just have made that game possible. What's a game that you loved that had multiple studios working behind it? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this deep dive into code development, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. As a smaller creator, it really, really helps. And I do appreciate it so much. And if you do comment, I'd love to hear from you. So please do. Thank you very much for watching.